Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is episode 115, a very special Watcher Watchback, where we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. This is a movie that I love so much. I have not revisited it in a long time. It's also very fun watching a pre-Dune Denis Villeneuve film because I am just so in love with him from those movies. So we're going to have a great discussion about Arrival today. It's going to be so much fun. Before we hop into that, I hope you're all doing well. What a week it has been. And this weekend got even better. I did my first ever guest spot on a podcast, Some Like It Real, hosted by Brian and Veronica. Me and Claire were the two guests. Claire also has another really great podcast. Go check it out. It's a fantastic episode where we did an A24 draft. It was 3 hours long. It's going to be a blast to listen to. I also got a new microphone this week. I have a Shure MV7 Plus. I decided to finally upgrade. So if it sounds different on the show or anything like that, I'm figuring out the audio settings because there's just so much customization. So remain patient with me. It will only get better and better from here. But I've upgraded to the real, podcaster mic. Although I loved my past microphone. I thought it did a great job for me. But there's going to be a fun little bit of audio tweaking and stuff like that as this grows and changes a little bit. But okay, let's talk about today's episode. Timestamps below, of course. I know this is a 10-year-old movie, Arrival, but we'll have the non-spoilers, the spoiler section. I'll have that all marked down below for you. We also have the news section, the What Else I Watched segment. There's going to be so much to cover today, so let's stop messing around. Let's jump right into the news. So our first piece of news comes from Deadline, who say exclusive. James Gunn is zeroing in on his choice for another key role in Superman sequel Man of Tomorrow, with Marissa Abella, Adria Arjona, and Ella Purnell beginning to test last week. Multiple sources tell Deadline. According to Deadline, the character that they are all testing for is the character Maxima, the warrior queen from the planet Almerac, first introduced in Action Comics 645 in 1990, who arrives on Earth in search of a suitable mate and quickly sets her sights on Superman. I think these three would knock it out of the park. Marissa Abella, Ella Purnell, and Adria Arjona. It's unfortunate that it was quickly debunked by James Gunn. He said, "This is not against Nexus News. They're sharing what Deadline reported, but Deadline's reporting is shoddy and incorrect. I've always thought that Deadline was pretty thorough in their journalism, but that's not the case here, so I'm frankly disappointed. If someone would have run these names by us, we would have said it's bullshit. I've been friends with Adria Arjona a long time since I cast her in the Belko Experiment. I'm a fan of both Marissa and Ella, but I've never met either of them. Crazy." I mean, I do think the day is coming that all three of these actresses will be in the DCU. I mean, Marissa Abella is just fantastic in this little movie called Black Bag last year, made by Steven Soderbergh, who unfortunately had a really stupid AI statement this week that apparently his next movie is going to be so much AI. Ugh, oh my God, it pisses me off. Ella Purnell, I love her on Fallout Season 2, which I actually never finished, and I really do need to revisit. Adria Arjona is building up such a fantastic resume of movies. She's always such a great supporting actress. I'd love her to play Wonder Woman. I could totally see her in that role. I think there's so many roles that she could play. She's fantastic in everything I see her in. I love Adria Arjona. You never know. I'm sure that the DC studios higher ups have their actresses and they have the people that they want to play these roles. So I definitely think the three of them are on this list. James Gunn, I mean, people say that he's chronically online or he's too online, but I would say a huge compliment to him is he's very good at shutting down rumors like right away. He doesn't really let things get out of control, and I really do sort of admire that about him, especially when it's like testing things. He's super honest about who's testing as well. I remember when they were doing Superman testing, wasn't he just sort of publicly saying like who is testing right now and who are the final choices? That's kind of a crazy thing to do. So I don't know. I think this is pretty sweet, and it's cool that he's at least saying that he loves those two actresses, even if he has never met them, and he's very honest about his love for Adria Arjona. Again, I think the three of them will show up in the DC universe at some point, but let's move to our next story. Tom Holland this week was talking about how maintaining the theatrical experience is something for the next 10 years of my life that I will be very focused on. He said, quote, "I am a real advocate for theatrical and cinema and the communal experience of sitting in a dark room and being entertained. And I think there are some studios that do a better job of that than others. And I'm really keen to build relationships with those guys so that as a community, we can keep the cinemas going. Now, this is an interesting little piece of news because as well this week, we had Ryan Coogler, Emma Thomas, Brad Bird, Jerry Bruckheimer, Jason Reitman, Celine Song, all forming the Filmmaker Leadership Council. And the council will serve to provide meaningful support for theatrical exhibition. On top of all of that, there was a study this week that said, according to Variety, Gen Z has become the most active cinema-going demographic. Quote, what's especially notable is how strongly they value the shared communal aspect of the experience, reinforcing that theaters continue to play an important role as a social destination for younger audiences. So there is so much work happening at the moment to really preserve the theatrical experience, which I love so much. I'm a huge movie theater goer. Like, you guys know how passionate I am about movie theaters, and I think there's nowhere as good as a movie theater to watch a big movie, any movie. To this week, and what else I watched, I'm going to talk about a couple movies that I saw in the theaters. I would rather see them in theaters 100 times instead of watching it at home once, because it's just such a fun, different experience. And this is really cool. I love that so many people in Hollywood are saying, okay, we're at a real clinical moment, and we do need to step up and make sure that this theater going experience, that this very important method, why cinema matters, what's important to cinema, we preserve this. And the fact that it's Tom Holland, I think, is really interesting. Yes, he's this young actor who's really only done Spider-Man so far, I think, is, how people think of him. Sure, he was in the Uncharted movie, but I don't think people think as highly of the Uncharted movie as they do of his Spider-Man movies. I mean, it was a little video game movie that made a bunch of money, but it's not Spider-Man. I'm very excited to see him in the Odyssey this summer, not just because I think he probably learned so much as an actor working with Christopher Nolan, but I think it's sort of changed him as a film person. I mean, he worked with Nolan, and then a year later, he's talking about the movie-going experience and how important it is to him to preserve this way of living our lives and engaging with art and being social, enjoying a communal experience. So I'm very happy about this. Good for him. I'm happy that we are also getting this feature film council that's going to look after the theatrical experience, because all of that stuff is so important to me. So this is really great news. Now, in a less nice piece of news, we have Olivia Munn this week, who was talking about how a male co-star refused to film a scene with her after he would be saved by a woman, and he stopped production for 45 minutes. So according to Olivia Munn, she says one of her former male co-stars refused to be saved by her in a scene and stopped production for 45 minutes to fight off the story beat. We were about to shoot, and somehow I guess he didn't read the script, and in that moment he realized, wait, hold on, she can't save me. No, she can't save me. This type of stuff, I think people don't realize how much it happens in Hollywood, particularly with huge movie stars on really big sets. There is a lot of ego on set, and there is a lot of people that are fighting to maintain status, maintain their image. Like, you think of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Vin Diesel on the Fast and Furious movies. That is literally just a little microcosm or a small ecological example of a larger environment. Like, Olivia Munn is not alone here. This happens all the time, and particularly with Vin Diesel and The Rock. The Rock had a clause in his contracts that he could not lose in a fight. To the outside world, that sounds insane, and it's very funny how in The Smashing Machine, the entire premise is that he loses 2 fights. Spoiler alert, but that's the entire premise of The Smashing Machine, and it kind of shows how much he's maybe evolved as an actor, and good for him. But this type of thing happens all the time, that people would rather spend millions of dollars and, save their public image and not have a woman save me because it's going to put me down and men are going to think I'm weak. People have been trying to theorize what is the movie that she's talking about. A lot of people are saying that it's X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know. It's hard to say. I wouldn't be shocked if it was X-Men Apocalypse, just because I do think that was like a little bit of a toxic set. Didn't Bryan Singer direct X-Men Apocalypse? Like, that's absolutely insane to me that they let him come back for that movie. He is such a awful person, and he had already come back for another X-Men movie. Like, Hollywood, what are you guys doing? Come on. So I feel bad for Olivia Munn. I don't know. I feel like she gets dragged in public a lot, but that's a really embarrassing thing to go through on a set. So those types of stories, unfortunately, do happen a lot in Hollywood, and it's very disappointing to hear another public outcry about this. Like, sort of happy though that she's talking about it. There's been so many great instances where actresses are kind of just calling out the awful things that have happened to them. Like Lily Reinhart just last week said that a director asked her to suck in her belly on a take. And of course, there's the Rebecca Ferguson story where she says a male co-star yelled at me on set, and it's just awful stuff like that. But I'm happy that people are feeling comfortable enough to come out and say it publicly. But our final story of the week, before we hop into Arrival, speaking of science fiction, Steven Spielberg says he was involved with Interstellar for a year before dropping out. Quote, I became fascinated with it. I actually hired Christopher Nolan's brother, Jonathan, to write the first and second draft for me, but it didn't stick. Jonah actually said, if there comes a point where you decide not to make this movie, I can tell you who's going to grab it. He's already bugging me about it, and that's my brother Chris. He was absolutely right. The second I decided not to make it, Chris jumped on board. Probably the next day. Interstellar was a much better movie in Christopher Nolan's hands than it would have been in mine. I'm actually very happy that he has, no regret about it, and he realizes that this is not a Steven Spielberg sci-fi film. This is not the style. Interstellar is not the style of a Steven Spielberg sci-fi movie. He does much more uplifting kind of, parent focused, but not in an Interstellar way, like War of the Worlds. I'm actually seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind, his 1977 film in 70 millimeter in a couple weeks for the very first time in my life. I'm excited. I'm going to try and do a Steven Spielberg filmography watch through before Disclosure Day on June 12th. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm really going to try and crank through it. But it's interesting how you think about the what ifs of certain films and the what ifs of Interstellar. What if it was Steven Spielberg instead of Christopher Nolan? I mean, Interstellar is a lot of people's favorite Nolan film. It's not mine. I love it dearly. I think it is such a gorgeous, fantastic, epic, huge film like the one we're going to talk about today. I just can't see it as a Steven Spielberg film, though. I think his sentiments and his overall visual language and just how he assembles his stories is so different from Interstellar. I don't see a way that a Steven Spielberg Interstellar could happen. It would have taken a lot of rewriting. I think it went to the right hands at the end of the day. And I'm happy that we're getting, Steven Spielberg back in sci-fi. This is going to be a huge thing. Disclosure Day looks fantastic to me. I think it is going to be really good. And of course, The Odyssey looks fantastic. I don't think either of the directors have been suffering. They've gone on to make phenomenal films. But speaking of directors who make phenomenal films, what a segue that was. We are going to talk about Arrival today. So again, timestamps below. If you haven't seen Arrival, I am begging you, go and watch this movie, then come back, listen to the episode. One of the best sci-fi movies of all time. It is a classic Denis Villeneuve film. We'll have the non-spoilers, then the spoilers section. Then of course, we'll go into what else I watched, but let's do it. Let's talk about Arrival for a Watcher Watchback. Arrival is a 2016 sci-fi thriller film coming in at 1 hour, 56 minutes. It is directed by Denis Villeneuve, written by Eric Heiserer on a budget of $47 million. Its box office income was $203.4 million. Reviews are very positive, 7.9 on IMDb, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 83% audience score. Interesting that the fan score is lower than the critic score, but it has a 4.1 on Letterboxd with a 4-star mode. The synopsis for Arrival. Taking place after alien crafts land around the world, an expert linguist is recruited by the military to determine whether they come in peace or are a threat. The film stars Amy Adams as Louise Banks, Jeremy Renner as Ian Donnelly, Forrest Whitaker as Colonel Weber, Michael Stuhlbarg as Agent Halpern, Mark O'Brien as Captain Marks, C. Ma as General Shang, Abigail Pinowski as 8-year-old Hannah, and Julia Scarlett Dan as 12-year-old Hannah. So here we are 10 years after the arrival of Arrival, I guess you could say. Now, this is not exactly the 10-year anniversary. This came out later in the year, but I thought, you know what? We have a little bit of a gap this week, and I want to rewatch Arrival ahead of Dune later in the year. This would be a great time to do a Watcher Watchback because it's a fun 10-year anniversary, and I've been seeing so many clips of it recently, so I decided, why the hell not? Let's talk about Arrival. So here are my initial rewatch thoughts on Arrival. This is my first rewatch since 2018, and Arrival really is one of the movies that film bros and film lovers just reference in sci-fi. Like, it is one of the almost biblical texts of sci-fi, of these big film bro movies. It's magnetic, it's crushing, it's huge, it's epic. I love it so much. This is only my second time watching it ever, and it felt like, again, just like the first time. It's one of those movies, just like Parasite, where if you don't watch it for a while and you come back to it, you really do forget so much, and it's such a shocking tempo to it. So I'm excited to talk about it today. Let's start with the cast, of course. Amy Adams as Dr. Louise Barker. I mean, remember when Amy Adams used to be in stuff? I miss her as an actress. You know, she hasn't done anything particularly outstanding in a little while. Like, let me read you her IMDb page for the last few years. So At the Sea was a 2026 project she worked on. Charlotte's Web, the miniseries, Night Bitch, Disenchanted, Dear Evan Hansen, The Woman in the Window, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Hillbilly Elegy, Vice, Sharp Objects, Justice League, Nocturnal Animals, and Arrival. Just before that, she of course had Batman v Superman, which also has a 10-year anniversary around the same time. So it's been a really interesting career trajectory that she's had since Batman v Superman, and sort of losing her way a little bit, I want to say. I do know that she was diagnosed with MS in 2014, so I don't know if she's had health complications, but it seems like she's kind of lost the sauce a little bit. She used to be one of our great actresses who was kind of doing movie after movie that would blow people away. I think she's an awful Lois Lane, which breaks my heart to say, but one of the first Amy Adams movies I actually saw was Catch Me If You Can. I love her in that movie, so she's been around for a while in my life, but she is just fantastic as Louise Banks. I think she leads this film so well. There's so much heartbreak because this is a film about grief, but it's not a straightforward film about grief and memory, and I just think she does so much in this movie. She's so stoic, she's so together, but then she sort of comes undone, and I love it so much. I think she is just so fantastic in this movie. Then we have Jeremy Renner as Ian Donnelly. Hey guys, Jeremy Renner here. That's my favorite sound drop of Jeremy Renner, but it's a super limited role, actually. You know, rewatching this movie, I was like, I thought Jeremy Renner was in this movie a lot more. I thought he had a way bigger role to play, but I like how limited he is and how we're slowly learning more about his character until this huge reveal. And the reveal is so great. Again, we're in non-spoilers, so don't worry. I'm not going to actually say what any of the big twists or anything like that or the mechanics of this movie are, because it is a crazy thing to experience for the first time yourself. But he has this small impact. I know he's a real scumbag dude in real life, and I don't like Jeremy Renner at all. This is from the time where we got good Jeremy Renner performances. Remember, this guy did The Hurt Locker. He was in Mission Impossible. He was good as Hawkeye for a while, and he was doing these big movies like Arrival. People wanted to work with Jeremy Renner. Such an interesting actor, like Amy Adams. The way his career has kind of transformed. He did Mayor of Kingstown or Dirtstown or Brownstown, something like that. One of those shows. One of the Paramount Plus, streaming shows that goes on AMC, I guess. And same with Forrest Whitaker. Speaking of actors that I feel like are doing kind of less and less, I think he has been in his Saul Guerrera boots for a little bit too long. Look, he's great as Saul Guerrera. I love him in Andor, love him in Rogue One, but let me read you his IMDb page. So he did Andor last year, of course, Godfather of Harlem, which is a TV show he's doing on MGM Plus, Havoc, the 2025 film from what's his name, Gareth Evans, Gareth Edward, no, not Gareth Edwards, not the Star Wars guy, but the one who did Room or the Train, something like that. Then we have The King of Kings, where he was the voice of Peter, Emperor of Ocean Park, Asgard's Wrath 2, which is a video game actually, Big George Foreman, Young Rock, Extrapolations, Respect, Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey, and then Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. So it's another really interesting actor. I mean, look, he's an Oscar winner. It's Forrest Whitaker. He is one of the biggest actors of all time, and it's so interesting to see his career trajectory as well, how it's sort of shifted over the years. I feel like he's always been a really big actor, but he is so good in Arrival. I love him as Colonel Weber. He's such a hard ass, and again, I love how hard he is on Amy Adams, and constantly you can see that he believes in her, but he puts her down so much and says I need more. You got to keep going. This isn't progress. Let's go. And it's just constantly pushing her to new levels. And it's fantastic to see. I seriously just love his performance and his role in this film. But let's talk about the story of Arrival. Now, this is actually based on the 1998 novella Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. I think it's like a 29-page short story, and Denis Villeneuve read it. He instantly thought yes, it should be transformed into a film, or I can't remember if it was actually him who discovered it or his writer, Eric Heiserer. I think it was Denis Villeneuve first, and he had read it a long time ago because it did come out, way back in 1998. And it's such an interesting story. I really do want to read the short story because it is a sci-fi short story. There are elements and glimpses of life that are happening here, but how it's translated to the big screen, I think I'm going to add it to my good reads list. The film is a very classic alien invasion, why are they here story. These aliens called heptapods come to Earth and Louise is hired to try and learn their language. It's super simple of a premise, like pretty easy, straightforward to understand, but I think the last hour of this movie really complicates things, throws you for a loop, and opens you up to this like whole new world of the film. And there is, the first hour of Arrival and the second hour of Arrival, and I think those are two very different things, and I love the final hour of this movie. I really like the first hour. Of course, it's absolutely fantastic, the first hour, but the story, you think it's super simple at first, like I just described to you, of yes, a linguist is hired. It's like Project Hail Mary, how we have this scientist who does molecular biology, let's get him to go solve this thing. It's the same thing in Arrival. We have this person who's an expert, let's hire them to figure out this problem for us, even though it's a completely different context. But Denis Villeneuve as a director, I want to talk about him specifically, of course. I love him so much, and this is the first movie of his that I have watched outside of Dune in probably 3 years, maybe 2 years. So I'm so used to seeing him in the sandbox of Arrakis, no pun intended, I guess you could say, and I forgot how much sauce he has outside of the Dune films as well. Like, he is not just a one world wonder. He is not like arguably George Lucas, where outside of Star Wars he hasn't really done tons. Denis Villeneuve is a fantastic filmmaker who, no matter the subject matter, he knows how to build scope with spaceships or scope in the world, and he makes his films feel so big. Even Prisoners, a story about kidnapped children or a kidnapped child, is so big and feels so much bigger than just this parent who is hunting down his child, trying to find them so he can save their life. It feels so much bigger than us, and he has such a weight to all of his worlds that he builds for us. But as big and as sprawling and as much scale as there is in all of his movies, it is always at the center of it about humanity. His stories always focus on the people, the heartbreak, the tragedy of life, whether it is Dune, Prisoners, Blade Runner 2049, Sicario. Every film that Denis Villeneuve does is really about predestination, about free will, about the trajectory of our lives and the tragedy of our lives, how so many things that happen to us in our lives are completely out of our hands. And I think it's just a really fascinating theme that we see developed across his filmography, how he feels about truly having choice in your life. And I wonder if he believes in like predestination, that life is truly chosen for us, or if he chooses to believe in free will. I would love to ask him that question if I ever got to Blade Runner 2049, Dune, Arrival, all of these movies talking about predestination versus free will. Now, his ability, Denis Villeneuve, to build up atmosphere, slowly laying these little foundational puzzles throughout the movie. Specifically, Arrival, I think, is his movie that most of all, out of his total filmography, it's the movie that is setting up so many dominoes from the very first minute of the film, and they all fall together in perfect line in the last hour. I think, Dune is not setting up all of these little pieces. It's about pieces that have been pre-set up by other people, and one person not realizing that they are stuck on this path that is knocking down all these dominoes, versus we're getting all of these little hints of puzzle pieces coming together of like Amy Adams' character trying to figure out what's happening and her own lifetime and things like that. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything because this is a spoiler-free section of the show, but it ties together so well in Arrival. I'm shocked at how well the last hour of this movie plays because it is so seamless. It is smooth. I think there's no hiccups along the way or lost translation, kind of, no pun intended, about a linguist movie. There's no lost in translation things where it's like, that didn't really come off the page very well. I also think, speaking of language, the use of language and linguistics is so fascinating in this movie, and this idea of rewiring our brains to think of an alien language completely outside of the confines of our understanding of language, that their language can be non-linear. I don't think that's a spoiler to say that they sort of use various words and it's non-linear, and that's a little thing that this film is talking about, how the structure of language can be outside of what we believe in our lifetime or what we understand in our lifetime, and outside of any human understanding. What if aliens did come to Earth, and how would their language be expressed? Would it be all in proverbs? Would it all be in backwards or something like that? Would it be all adjective? There's so many ways that you could try to hypothesize or theorize about what an alien language could sound like. And they did consult language experts who said, yes, this is exactly how it would go. And like the theorizing and the studying of the alien language in this film is so perfectly handled. And it's just like, yes, Amy Adams' character is very accurate to real life. So it's like Interstellar, actually, a movie we just talked about in the news section. Experts also agree, like, yes, there is so much that is accurate about this and really appreciate it. Now, the visual design and the breakdown of the heptapod language is crazy, how it's these insane glass ink designs, sort of almost sandy a little bit. They're like kind of squid type designs, and I love how they look on screen. The visual effects in this movie are just outstanding. Like, I cannot believe this movie was made for $40 million, $47 million. It's so much fun to see, you know, almost a symbol language instead of a word language, that they have all of these little markings and each little bit of the marking means a different thing. I don't think that's a spoiler to really break down because I'm not giving you any big twists or turns, but the actual language design, like so many amazing sci-fi films, is one thing that I just find so intriguing, whether it is the Fremen language or this movie's languages, any Star Wars language. I'm always interested in, like, how do they choose the words? And I love hearing from the people that are in charge of language design and how they choose the various influences and the words they want to sort of pull from. Are they doing actual words? Are they sounds? Are they images? How do people speak? How do they communicate? Really cool to see. And I would argue that one underappreciated element of Arrival is how they showcase the world's reaction to aliens invading, or not even invading, just coming to Earth to communicate. At first, everyone is so curious. They're like, oh my God, they're here. But slowly the world starts to fall apart a little bit. People start to freak out. Like, there's this religious group that all, you know, are outraged and they burn their church and kill themselves because they think like God's coming to get us. And this is the, what's the religious term for the rapture? They almost believe it's the rapture and like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the 12 ships around the world. I really love the religious little influences that are in here of like, how would the religious worlds? I wrote a paper way back in high school talking about religious belief and like fanaticism, but also outer belief and how that competes with science and sort of the relationship between science and religion. And I spoke about how there are certain religious communities, I think, that would freak out if aliens came to Earth, and they probably freak out even thinking about first contact. I love what Denis Villeneuve does with that concept in this film, and how governments would share information and data. How would they cooperate in the face of this type of thing where alien life comes to Earth? We also just had, again, speaking of Project Hail Mary, that is another movie about a smart person that's deployed to save the world, even as average as they are. And it's about language development, learning how to communicate with an alien. And that movie is also talking about sort of universal cooperation, how the world can come together. And obviously Andy Weir has spoken about how he wrote a more optimistic kind of sci-fi novel where the world is coming together and sharing all their information, and they have a task force, versus Arrival is the complete other end of that spectrum. So it's nice that we can get the kind of dichotomy or a real juxtaposition between the two of them, that they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, let's talk about cinematography from Bradford Young, who has also done Selma, Solo, a Star Wars story, and he's doing the Thomas Crown Affair from Michael B. Jordan. This movie is absolutely stunning. I love the sort of desolate use of gray. I will say it's a very 2016 looking movie. I feel like there were a lot of movies that had this particular color grading. I feel like it's even more common now, but in lower budget movies, oddly enough. I think it's sort of an attainable level of cinematography, how your sort of striking imagery comes about. But I think the color and the visual language, how everything is shot, I particularly love all the slow, really creeping shots, especially when we're in the spaceship and there's the gravity thing going on, and how we go up into the back of the ship, but then it flips and the gravity changes. Fantastically shot. I love the shot choices from Denis Villeneuve and the cinematography team. And as good as the cinematography is, I also love Joe Walker's editing. This is a movie that the editing is so crucial because, like I said, all of these domino pieces that have been set up need to fall in the perfect place at the end of the film. So how do we sort of really spend enough time in all of these moments? And it's kept under a tight 2 hours. This movie easily could have been 2.5 hours. I'm shocked it's not. There's so much more that could be in this movie. Maybe that's my only complaint, is that I think it's a little bit too short, and I would love another sort of 10 minutes in the last hour of this movie. So maybe I'm not without my issues of the movie, but I do think it's very close to being a masterpiece. The score by Johan Johansson, who we did lose in 2018, unfortunately, to a drug overdose. He did Prisoners, Sicario, The Theory of Everything. I love this score so much. It's so eerie, moody, creepy. It really does have this sort of grief-stricken sci-fi element that this movie is going for so well, and ties into the themes phenomenally. And the use of Max Richter's On the Nature of Daylight, I'll say it, I think it's better than the use of it in Hamnet, who Max Richter Richter actually scored that film as well. I think the way it uses it at the beginning of the film, and maybe it shows up one other time, I won't spoil anything, breaks my heart. I cry instantly. Now, the Oscar nominations. Let's talk about how Arrival did at the Oscars. So it had 8 nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. That's when sound was in 2 separate categories. Sound editing was its only win, but let's keep in mind this was a very tough year. We had Moonlight, La La Land, Manchester by the Sea, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Lion. There's so many Oscar-ish movies there, and I don't think Arrival is unfortunately an Oscar bodies sort of winner. I don't think a lot of Oscar voters are going to be really gunning for a sci-fi movie like this, so it's unfortunate, but 8 nominations is pretty great. Noticeably, no Best Actress for Amy Adams. I think that is a fucking crime because she is phenomenal here, but I still think it has a fantastic legacy outside of its Oscar nominations and how so many people love this movie. It really is a sacred text for so many sci-fi fans. So Arrival has definitely gone on to great things even since the Oscar nominations. It's a movie that so many people keep going back to every single year. But let's talk about the main themes of Arrival before we move into the spoiler section. It's a movie about grief and living every step of the journey, accepting things as they are, even when things could be changed. Again, predestination versus free will. Do we have choices in certain things? Should we not make choices? I think a lot of that is what's going on here. It's also about sort of living life with regret versus a manufactured life. And there are a lot of colonization, sort of colonial themes happening here where people are talking about colonization and first contact, obviously, between indigenous population, invading population. How does that play out? So I think it is a very thematically developed film. Denis Villeneuve does a great job really parsing out his thoughts and the themes in the final hour. I should say his writer and his editor really allow things to breathe just to the right amount. But okay, let's move into my 2 stars and a wish for Arrival, and then we will hop into the spoiler section. Star number 1, the sound design and language, like I said, is amazing. I could just look at the various little things and study the various little uses of their words and language and how the heptapods express themselves. I think is so fascinating. Star number 2, Amy Adams, phenomenal here. My favorite performance from her ever, hands down. I think she is just so top to bottom amazing in this film. No wrong steps, sells every moment. My wish, honestly, maybe that it's just too short. I could take another 10 minutes of sort of figuring out the language. I think there is a big jump in this movie where all of a sudden they do know a lot of the language, but I think it's paced so well. Overall, I think Arrival is a movie that needs to be mandatory sci-fi viewing. If you like sci-fi, if you want to get into sci-fi, Arrival is one that you have to check out. I loved it so much. I don't think it's perfect. It's like very close to perfect though, so I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. That has been the non-spoiler section for Arrival. Let's jump into spoilers. Okay, spoilers for Arrival. If you haven't seen the last hour of this movie, if you've never seen this movie, do not listen to this section because you really need to go watch it. It's fantastic. But the film opens with the death of her daughter who dies from a rare form of cancer, and it's an incurable form of cancer. So we think that Louise Banks is actually living her life with grief. We think she's moved on from this part of her life, and that sets up the grief tone for the rest of the film, and I love it so much. Opening with On the Nature of Daylight. The Max Richter song is absolutely heartbreaking and sets such an immediate tone for the movie, not just thematically talking about grief and memory. And I love the quote that the film opens with. I used to think this was the beginning of your story. Memory is a strange thing. It doesn't work like I thought it did. We are so bound by time, by its order. I think it's just like such a great little, I don't know, foreshadow, I guess, for the rest of the movie, but it just sets up what this movie is really going to be about. Now let's talk about non-linear language. Louise Banks' ability to learn the heptapod language, which then unlocks how she is actually seeing her life and explains the structure of the film. So because it's a non-linear language, they also live their lives non-linear in that they can see everything in their futures all the way to their past. Heptapods can see their entire life at once because there is actually a secret tool through language that you can unlock unlock time travel or sort of time prescience in some way. I love how this is developed. I love how she is slowly getting these little glimpses of her life throughout the film, and we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand that we're actually getting flashbacks to the future, and it's just such a complicated, dense, really, really complex thing to understand, and it's a little bit messy at first. Like, I'm sure that there's so many people that watch this movie, they're like, I don't really get it. Then you rewatch it and get it. I was shocked myself personally how well I understood this movie for the first time. I'm not very a scientific person, but I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So she's sort of wielding this skill, and through language, understanding their language and the all 12 parts, you can actually understand how to fix humanity, eventually save the heptapods. Now, again, this is a film about data sharing and cooperation on an international level. Where this movie really gets interesting is when China and Russia decide to basically go off the grid because they do not want to share their information about what the heptapods are teaching them. They think the heptapods, or the aliens are the heptapods. They think that they've brought them a weapon, and all of these countries are going to use a weapon against each other. There's a specific moment where the Russian intelligence, or the Russian sort of version of Louise Banks, translates what they are saying as there is not time, as in they don't see things linearly. But the Russians, they think that she means, oh, there's no time because they're going to detonate this weapon or use this weapon, or someone else is going to use this weapon. So they kill her because they don't want her to share this message with the rest of the world. We have Louise Banks learning 1 of 12. That's an important message that she gets. Not only is the screenplay giving us these little hints of what is the bigger thing that's happening in Louise Banks' life, but the heptapods are also giving all these little hints and trying to translate these hints that all 12 sort of alien ships or heptapod ships are actually presenting a tool to these different parts of the world where they are meant to share the information they're learning. That way everybody can unlock a tool to save humanity. Then in the future, 3,000 years later, they can save the heptapods. I love that reveal. I think it is such a fun way to diffuse the situation because, yeah, if aliens came to Earth, would there truly be global cooperation? I'm not sure I see it in the Andy Weir way of this sort of rose-tinted glasses of, oh my God, we all need to team up together. Our world's already in a crisis and nobody's working together. So what makes you think that we are going to miraculously have that because, oh, the sun's going to die in 30 years in Project Hail Mary, so we need to assemble this team together to figure out what's happening? No way. We know the sun's dying in, thousands of years or whatever. We know the world is quickly coming to an end. Things are going horribly. No one's trying to fix it. No one's cooperating to fix it. So I think that's just a cynical way to look at it versus Arrival has a way more realistic way of looking at it. That, yeah, as more information is presented, these countries are probably going to separate from each other because we are such a cynical, evil species that immediately assumes the worst, and we refuse to play well with others. We refuse to share information with others. So of course, this is going to be exactly what happens. So I love the view, sort of the cynicism that this movie takes. How Louise Banks has to diffuse that, I think, is also extremely important and adds so much weight to her character that she's really the one in the world that is solving the most and figuring out the most, and that she's the human that they trust the most. I think that's a really strong part of this film that I love a lot. And it's not just China and Russia that are mobilizing and turning against sort of the USA. There are plenty of Americans in this movie that turn against the US government, are protesting to how they are handling the alien situation, that they should be sharing information, that, oh my God, they're here to destroy us. Why are we not doing more? Why are we not fighting back? Why are we studying them? There's so much public outcry about how they are treating the aliens. And there's also a little subsection of radical US soldiers who plant C4 inside the spaceship. Now, what's interesting about that moment where the C4 detonates, the two heptapods, according to this Reddit comment I read, knew there was going to be a bomb in their ship. They knew how long they had left. And when Luis and Abbott, one of the heptapods, the Abbott and Costello are the heptapods, right on the barrier together, Costello swims away. Abbott knew his death was approaching, but he stayed behind to not only data dump the language panel, but also to save Ian and Louise from the explosion. Because remember, the heptapods, they can see into the future, they can see way into the past, so they know this explosion is coming. In many ways, Abbott has already seen his death from way in the future or way in the past, I guess you could say. He sees sort of the end of it, but he doesn't live a linear lifestyle, of course. None of them do linear lifestyle. That sounds like some sort of, lifestyle choice that we're making. They don't live life linearly. They don't experience time the same way they do because of their language. That is a fantastic moment in the film. And once you realize, again, like the explanation of the bomb scene, why they all of a sudden dump all that information, they push them away. I think it is so well planted, no pun intended with the C4, in the film and how it's explaining things that no, you're living your life non-linearly. And this is just such a great movie for hinting and dropping these little things that are not fully explainable or fully able to be understood until the end of the movie. You really do need to make it all the way to then, because it is so important to see it all tied together, because it's just, I think, explained so well personally. The little hint that the daughter is saying, mommy and daddy talk to animals. If you want science, call your father. There's all of these little hints along the way from Louise's daughter that her husband is a scientist. Who could it be? It's Jeremy Renner. Of course it is. Now, how is Louise able to eventually live her life non-linearly as well? How is this entire film Arrival happening? Because the film is how Louise sees her life, This is how she sees this chapter of her life from first contact onward. There's this really great quote from Dr. Ian who says, if you speak another language so much, you can rewire your brain, as in you will think in that language and you will operate. Your personality can even change in how you live your life. That is the biggest key to the time travel thing. That is how they are able to do this entire thing, that how you are able to manipulate yourself and change time around you. You're rewiring your brain and how you function within time. And this is the key that unlocks that. Again, one of 12. This is one of the 12 keys, at least. Louise is just a small piece of this who is able to do this. And in fact, in the movie, she is not the only one who is able to do this, because the general at the end, General Shang, he also is able to do this, because he's the one that in the future says, how I first, decided to work with the Americans, or how I sort of turned us back onto the grid was because of what you told me. And I believe that is because he is able to time travel as well. And he learned the heptapod language in the future so he could go back, give Louise the information. Again, it's time travel. It gets very messy. It's hard to say what is definitive, what is not, who learns what, where, how, and when, and why, all of that stuff. But I really love the moment with the general at the end of the film, how I think he is also rewiring his brain so that he can go back and help Louise when they meet at that function where they're celebrating her. The last hour of this movie has so much stuff in it. It is so dense. It's unbelievable. Like the fact that we get the alien reveal that 3,000 years from now, we're going to need your help and we want to save humanity now so you can help us in the future. I mean, the one of 12 thing is a huge reveal of that. Of course, we have Louise tells Ian that their daughter will die and he's upset. So they are actually split up when they get married. Hannah, the name of their daughter, is a palindrome. It's giving a huge hint at the overall movie that this is, the same thing forwards and backwards because it is non-linearly. All of these scenes don't really matter the order and it's more circular. The general also has the power unlocked, or the ability unlocked. She's using her book to also translate in the presence. That's one of my favorite things about the power, actually, or the tool that she has, is that she is eventually learning how to harness it a little bit more and more and more, to the point where she's using her own book in the future. That's such a really cool part to me. But the last hour, like I said in the non-spoiler section, there's the first hour of Arrival and then there's the second hour. And the second hour of this movie is absolutely berserk. I think it is crazy. So much is revealed. So much is tied together. There are so many big movie moments in this film that I think are just undeniably iconic moments. I adore this movie beyond belief. I think it is just so good. Arrival is a mandatory watch. Like I said, if you're trying to get into sci-fi, Arrival is a big one that you need to see. It's under 2 hours. Like, you're really not spending that much time on it. There's great performances, great direction. I think it's a very important step along the way in Denis Villeneuve's filmography as well. It feels like a big precursor to Dune and understanding different languages and how he uses space and big ships and stuff like that at scale. I love how the movie ends with holding him for the first time and the last time, Dr. Ian Kelson being embraced by Louise. But I think that's all I have for the spoiler section. So let's move to what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? Well, I have 4 movies, 6 TV shows, and 1 book to talk about. I did start reading a comic book. I'm going to save that for next week. Project Hail Mary, I got all the way past page 200, so we're almost halfway there. It's been so busy, and I've just been struggling to find time to read recently, but I'm going to do some reading this week majorly. I'm excited to try and breeze through it whenever I have some spare time. We just got past the point where him and Rocky are communicating for the first time, and he's just learning how to write down names, and like he's trying to understand how Rocky sees things through sonar. And it's really fun. Their first meeting, the first time they meet each other, I think they translated that so well to the film, because had they screwed that up, I think the movie would have been in a lot of trouble. But they definitely nailed that in the live action, or the film adaptation, pardon me, of Project Hail Mary. But let's talk about some TV shows. I've at last finished The Batman season 4 episode 13, which was the series finale, so I'm done that show forever. Did it hold up to Batman the Animated Series? I would say definitely not. I feel like there's a lot less creativity in the villains that they're using. It's a lot of repeated villains. Like every season has basically the same villains. The final season, I will say, because they're using so many Justice League villains, does get impressive, but it ends on a really sort of nice note with them in the Justice League Watchtower. So it was pretty fun overall. But again, I was watching this in the first place to see how does it compare to Batman the Animated Series. It doesn't fully live up to it. But speaking of superhero shows, Daredevil Born Again, I watched episodes 2, 3, and 4, and holy dear God, this season is so good. The action, the fighting, the storylines, Bullseye is just such a great character once again this season. I am enjoying it so much. I'm very happy that I'm week to week, because it's the first thing I want to watch every week other than Survivor 50. I mean, it's just amazing how having the same creative team and the same storyline throughout the entire season makes a world of a difference. Who would have thought? Because season 1, of course, they had the huge creative overhaul. Season 2 feels very streamlined. It's all a singular tone. I think it's just super well written. I love what's happening in the show. I just hit the big Vanessa portion, if you know, you know, where there was the boxing match. So I'm excited for episode 5. And we did finish another season of Survivor this week. Survivor season 32, Cow Wrong, where Michelle won the season. Overall, it was really great. I liked it a lot. I think she is a very worthy winner. I made a little video about it in my social media today saying that like, oh, people think she's such a controversial winner because she got to take a jury member away. I don't know. Maybe she still would have had the votes, because I don't know if it was that close. Maybe Neil could have had actually a lot of arguments or a lot of words in the ears of the other jury members, and is a very convincing guy. So maybe I'm wrong. And yeah, there is a reason that they never did that advantage again, that you get to knock off a jury member. And Michelle, either way, I think she chose the right jury member. She played the advantage that was given to her. You can't be mad at her for playing the cards that were presented. Like, she was well within the rules. Pretty fun season overall. It does feel incredibly cynical because of Scott and Jason, who are just so mean to everybody. Like, they're kind of very rude guys, and I feel like they take a lot of the fun out of the room for many of the days that they were living on the island out of the 39 days. So I was happy they didn't win. They didn't even go that far as well. Like Jason, I think he goes out 7th or 8th, and I'm glad, because he seems like a real asshole. Both him and Scott are so bitter at the live reunion, and I love it. I eat that up. And after that, of course, we finished Cow Wrong, which is Aubrey's first season. We moved on to season 34, which is Game Changers. We're currently on episode 2. So we are, finishing every season that the contestants of 50 were on. We will have seen every season. So we're going to do Game Changers. Then we'll do season 35, Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers with Chrissy. So far, 1 episode into Game Changers, so many iconic characters. Tony just went home second in the game, and I love his beef with Sandra. Let's talk about Survivor 50, though. We had episode 7 this week, where Dee was voted out. Kind of fun that there's no remaining winners. I think it was a very good episode as well. The showdown between the Coach Honor and Integrity Alliance, quote unquote Honor and Integrity, who still blindside and backstab people, versus the Aussie Cerie camp is really fun. It's interesting that, Christian and Rick Devens are all in the middle, and there was a hilarious moment this week where Coach is like, well, why don't we get Christian out, one of the middle people, oh, I hate these middle people. And he says it to Rick Devens, and right after, Rizzo's like, hey, Coach, Rick is one of the middle players, right? And it's such a foot and mouth moment. Coach really has not changed at all in his Survivor years. He is the exact same guy, still doesn't know how to talk to people, still treats women poorly, still a religious weirdo, and he's just such an odd guy with all of these stories. Who knows which ones are true, which ones are fake. And I think there's no way he wins Survivor 50. He was my winner pick for a few weeks, but I'm like, nobody's going to give him $1 million. He's just such an idiot, and he's not going to make it to the end again. Even if he does, he doesn't own up to his actions, doesn't know how to take accountability, won't admit that he backstabs, he lies, all of this stuff. So I'm very interested to see how it develops from here. I think, I said to my girlfriend this week, I think honestly, Rizzo, Suri, and Ozzy could be the final three. I think it's a very strong possibility because of the advantages that they have. I think they're playing the game super well, willing to work with so many different people. So I could totally see them being the final three. I would love a Suri win on Survivor season 50. Last TV show I will talk about, though, The Pitt season 2, episode 14, 8 p.m. This is the penultimate episode of the season. I can't believe it's already the season finale next week. My God, it's been 15 weeks of The Pitt already. Interesting how Dr. Mohan's storyline has just completely been written out of the show, apparently, and she is nowhere to be found. I'm sort of shocked by it. I don't know what's going on. Maybe the writers just don't find her storyline that captivating, or test audiences, or whoever they show these episodes to before they go to air, or to the final approvals, I guess, because she was so prominent in last season. We've barely seen her this season, and she's not on season 3. So what's going on there? And there have been some complaints that, it's just the Robbie show now, and it's all about Robbie's problems. That was season 1 too. It was sort of all about him freaking out after COVID, having PTSD. This season is about his, suicidal thoughts, and I really loved his discussion with his biker friend Duke, I think is his name. I really liked that conversation, how it was just these two older guys talking about their feelings, the mistakes they've made in their lives, how they want to move on from that kind of stuff, and the importance of talking about it. Really, really gorgeous and fragile stuff. I'm excited to see the finale next week. Are we going to get the ICE storyline actually wrapped up and something done about it? What is the big mystery of the season? I guess it's Robbie killing himself, possibly. But yeah, going to be an interesting finale. Let's talk about some movies, though. So I have 3 new releases and one film that I had never seen before from 1993. Let's start with the first new release, Mike and Nick and Alice. This is directed by Ben David Grabinski, who I listened to actually on the Big Picture podcast just last week. Very interesting guy. I think I follow him on Twitter. He's a very funny person. This film, it's about 2 gangsters and the woman they love trying to survive the most dangerous night of their lives. As if that wasn't enough, there's one wild ingredient added to the mix, a time machine. So there's 2 Vince Vaughns in this movie. It's a time machine, all in one night movie. I thought this was going to be right up my alley. I love action, comedy, sci-fi movies that are a little bit of a twist, but this was so over stylized with strange editing choices all over the place, really boring action. I didn't find the action captivating at all in this. I think it's so stale, and the cast is so bland. Vince Vaughn, James Marsden, Aiza Gonzalez. I don't find any of these actors interesting. I think they're all incredibly bland and boring and not captivating. So I was kind of disappointing. I mean, I appreciate Ben David Grabinski trying to evoke a sort of lost style of film, or feelings from film 20 years ago with like sort of the techno-paced score and the needle drops, and even the 2 male leads were very popular 20 years ago, but the movie felt painfully stuck in 2007. So I gave it 2.5 stars. Really just was not big on it. It's kind of a disappointment to me. A movie that actually surpassed my expectations. I really did not think this was going to be any good. Pizza Movie, which stars Gaten Matarazzo and Sean Giabrone. Gaten Matarazzo, you might know from Stranger Things. So this movie is a shy college student and his reckless roommate set out on a simple mission to grab pizza. But after a strange dose of a mind-bending experimental drug, they're thrust into a chaotic night of absurd encounters, wild hallucinations, and an unexpected revelation that could change their lives forever. I thought this movie was hilarious. It was so much fun. I watched this at 6 a.m. before work one day. It's a perfect example of what a stoner comedy should be. I mean, it's miraculously silly. It never takes itself too seriously. It knows exactly what it needs to be. I love movies that are just so self-assured. This is not aiming to blow us away, start a new cinematic language or anything like that. I love the 3 main leads. That also the AR guy, or the RA guy, pardon me. He's hilarious in this movie. I've seen him on TikTok, I think, or something like that. And I don't know why Caleb Heron is in this movie or why he keeps being put in stuff. I just don't find him funny at all. He sucks the air out of every single comedy scene because he has to overplay it and yell the entire time. He just doesn't have a lot of nuance or variety to him. Aside from that, I loved the Inglourious Bastards parody that they have in this with the RA kid. Very surprised by Pizza Movie. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then the final final new release of this week that I saw, You, Me, and Tuscany. A free-spirited American chef and reserved British lawyer embark on a whirlwind romance during a destination wedding in coastal Italy. I think that's actually a very inaccurate synopsis from Letterboxd. It's actually about this American girl who has always dreamed of going to Italy. It was her and her mom's dream. When her mom got sick and died, she decided not to use the plane ticket. She meets this Italian guy in New York City, decides that she's going to go stay in his house in Italy because she works as a house sitter. I thought the movie was hilarious, heartfelt, corny. I love the twist in the premise that when she gets there, she accidentally puts on his wedding ring in front of the family and people think they're engaged and he's not there to say, no, we aren't. So it's this like quirky, kind of crazy, twisted up world that was just such a blast. I thought it was, again, so corny, so heartfelt. Spiritually, this is a 2008 movie, but in the best way possible. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. My girlfriend went and saw it with me, and she was like, yeah, that was pretty much what I thought. I said the exact same thing. Very cringy at times and hard to get through, but it gives me faith in the movie-going experience that we're still getting these little rom-coms like this in theaters. Sort of wild they played the Odyssey trailer before this because it's a Universal Pictures film. But I thought You, Me, and Tuscany was charming, so I gave it 3 stars. But the final film I'm going to talk about this week, Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey from 1993. This is directed by Dwayne Dunham. My girlfriend picked this last night because she loved it as a child. It's a movie about 2 dogs and a cat that are trying to get home after their family abandons them because they move houses, or it's a classic type of movie of like animals going on this incredible journey. Now this would probably be an Illumination Studios film. I don't know. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be as well. It was cute. I am a dog lover. Of course, I'm a dog owner. There's a golden retriever in this film who is just so gorgeous. I hate how much they use the name of the dog, Shadow. The cat says Shadow every single line. And I posted that I watched it on my story last night. And one of my friends said, take a shot every time they say the name Shadow. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. They say it so much in the movie. It was adorable. I don't think it's hurting anyone. I thought it was pretty goofy. Stars Michael J. Fox and Sally Fields, which is crazy. I gave it 2.5 stars. It didn't blow me away, but I thought it was pretty cute. Next week, we will have even more new releases. I'm actually seeing Faces of Death tomorrow. I'm going to watch the new Jonah Hill Apple movie, which I've heard is terrible. It's going to be a lot of great stuff next week. But for now, that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 115, a Watcher Watchback on Arrival. A lot of fun revisiting this movie. I think it is so good. Even on a rewatch almost 10 years later, I want to say, or 8 years later, I think. As always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. If you're on Spotify, you can actually comment right underneath the episode. What do you think of Arrival? Is it one of your favorite Denis Villeneuve films? What's your favorite sci-fi movie? If you're on the YouTube channel, hit like, subscribe, and comment all that stuff down below. What are you watching at the moment? What movies are you excited to see in the future? What's your favorite movie of the year so far? Also, check out my latest YouTube video ranking recent Best Picture winners. A very fun video that is on the channel. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email the show, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at Watcher of All Things, and the TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media every single day, tons of different videos. Check out all of the different profiles I have, all linked down below, along with my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, we have Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I have never watched a single Mummy movie. I've seen movies with mummies in them. I mean, the Mummy franchise. So maybe I'll watch the other ones ahead of that, but that will be next week. For now, thank you all so much for listening, for all of the love. I love hearing from you guys every single week, especially on the Watcher Watchback episodes. I love hearing your recommendations of classic movies that we should go back and watch. I will try to get to the various ones that people have suggested, but thank you all so much again. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.